our royal icing dome, you're just going to need a former of some sort. I'm using the styrofoam half sphere. Be careful when you use these or plastic. You do want to put some Crisco or Trex on it to make sure it releases, but be careful not to put too much because that will break your icing down. So you're just going to use a paper towel with a little bit. You're going to put it on fairly heavy at first, and then you're going to take the dry paper towel to wipe off the excess. So make sure it's all across your former, then take your dry one and wipe the majority off. It should just have a little sheen, just being careful not to have too much. And then that's all prepped and ready to go. Then you also want to have a water container and a paintbrush that you can clean up any of your lines. For your royal icing, you're just going to want to have a bag of your preference. I like to use the vinyl bags. Parchment are a little too soft for me. I tend to break them, and plastic are harsh on my hands. I do like the vinyl because the tighter you wind it, less pressure it takes from your hands. And I'm going to use a tip tube by PME. If you're going to use this on a competition piece or you're looking for more delicate, use a 1.5 or a 1 if you're pretty familiar with royal icing. And you want to have it about a medium consistency, between a medium and a stiff. I'm going to squirt some on my hand so you can see it's going to hold its shape. So it's a little more towards the stiff side. You want to definitely keep that shape and makes it stronger. So first we're going to pipe a line just around our edge, which is going to give us the base of our former. So you're just going to hold your bag just at a 90-degree angle to the styrofoam, squeeze, turning it as it comes out. Now I'm trying to keep an eye on where I'm starting it to keep the same amount of distance all the way around from the bottom to my line. Don't worry if you get off a little, it's going to be fine, because when you go to attach this to your actual cake, you're going to pipe a border on that as well. So just get all the way around there, almost there. And then when you end off, you're going to take a damp paintbrush and just clean that up a little. You don't want to have any big amounts of icing sitting there. And that will be more. This is also a chance, if you find it's a little off, you can take your paintbrush and just glide the icing over slightly to get it so it's a little more even all the way around. So that's the piece that's going to sit on your cake. So now we're going to create the lattice pattern. So you're going to pick anywhere. I usually start in the middle, join your icing to what you've started. And you'll notice I keep my tip away from the former. I like to let gravity let it naturally fall, and this way I'm also ensuring I'm getting the full size of my tip, because we don't want to have it flattened. And again, end off. And again, take your paintbrush. You notice I wipe the water off on my hand as well. You don't want that paintbrush to be really wet, just damp. And it's a good idea to try to clean all your areas up. It just makes it a better finish in the end of your product. So now what you're going to do is you're going to continue doing lines on both sides. I usually aim for probably about 1/4 of an inch apart, maybe slightly more than 1/4 inch, because I want to be able to see through it. Usually when I have the domes, I'm going to have something like flowers underneath it. You could also have another piped piece. I mean, you can just have your cake if you prefer. But the wider it is, the more you're going to see through it. So make sure you think about how you're spacing and what you're putting underneath it when you're doing these lines. So just going straight, like I said, keeping an eye on your spacing. So whatever you set that spacing to be, make sure you're keeping it as even as you can. It's not necessarily going to be perfect. But again, while it's still wet, you do have that chance to go ahead and finish it up. Tidy it up just a little. Clean that edge, and then keep going. You notice I just put a dowel inside the styrofoam ball. I just took a piece of regular wooden dowel and sharpened it with a pencil sharpener, and then inserted it in here so it gives me something to hold on to. It's also good for when you're trying to let it to sit and dry. You can put it inside a piece of florist foam and then give your dome a chance to dry. So making sure that it sticks. Again, just go, like I said, now that I've got my spacing set, you're trying to keep your lines all about the same width apart if you can. So keeping an eye on that first space, that's the width I'm trying to keep for my next one. And then you're going to follow that all the way through. Okay, so that's one direction. So now we're going to start on the other side. We're going to come just literally 90 degrees across. So what it'll look like is we've got little diamonds in there once we're all said and done. So we're going to start the same. I start right in the center of that large one. Again, let it just naturally fall. Careful not to let it sag. We don't want it to sag. We want it to sit up tight. So you're keeping it tight enough that it's going to rest on top but not fall down in between. So we'll let you take a look at this in a sec. So essentially what I'm talking about, you can see that this line is sitting right up on top. There's no dips. It's not lying down in between. You want to keep it so it's resting on top and not sagging down. If you're having a problem with it sagging down, it could be that your icing is a bit too thin as well. Again, consistency is important at this point. So you want to make sure that your icing has got the right consistency to hold up. So now bear in mind your spacing that you did on these last sides. You want to get the spacing similar on this side if you can. Once you get going, you're going to find you're just going to end up going on every line that you did, and it makes it a bit easier. Sometimes your first two, you've kind of got to play with it a little bit and start a pattern on your own. But usually you'll line it up pretty good with the stuff you've already piped. That's why I love having this little piece of wood in the dowel inside my styrofoam ball, because it allows me to turn it and give a little bit more ability in your piping and seeing it, versus trying to, if you just had a ball and you were trying to pipe around, it's a lot easier to maneuver this than it is to hold it up straight. And there we go. There's our finished pipe dome. Now that we've got our domes dried, is a good time to take them off. I'm going to put it on top. I've just did a little bit of icing with some of those royal icing flowers just to give a pop of color inside. So all you're going to do is you're going to hold onto your dome. I use the very tips of my finger to gently push up on the dome in a few places. Sometimes it sounds like it's going to crack. Sometimes it does crack, like that. Well, I can repair what's broken. See, it has released. So what you're going to do is take it and let it fall in your hand. And very gently put it back on your fingers here. We're going to sit it down on the cake. Oh, get rid of that piece that's sitting on my cake. Okay. And real gently sit it down. You don't want to let it fall real hard. So it's great if you can get it off the edge and slide it in. So you want to center it over the top. You could have, like I said, gum paste flowers are nice under this size of a dome because it's big enough. Little clusters like that do work with the smaller ones, but I wanted to remove the bigger one to show y'all. So what you can do is squirt, I've got number 2 on here, and just squirt a little bit of icing in a few spots just to lock it in place. Now if it's not sitting completely flat, you may have to fill in a little bit. We are going to put a border, a little bead border around it, so don't worry about that. But it's nice if you can go ahead and get it locked in place before you start to do your border. But if you've got any big major gaps, that's the best place to try to fill. And the reason you'll have gaps is because we were trying to pipe a straight line around a round sphere. Sometimes we don't get a perfect straight line, but that's one of the reasons we always put a border around that edge as well. So 3 or 4 spots there to get some good attachment. Like I said, if you've got some areas that have a real definite gap, you want to get those filled because it makes it hard to do your border, or at least pipe a straight line underneath it that you can attach your border to. But that should give us some really good contact. It shouldn't go anywhere here. Once I get back around, because we did this in a 2, I'm going to go ahead and pipe the little piece that broke. You can go ahead and pipe across to fill that in. So sometimes if little pieces snap off, don't worry, it's fine, you can repair. You can repair just about anything with royal. So where it broke, I've got a hole right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get inside there and bring it down to the side. So I've got to try to do that back one first. So just get it to attach. And I've got a little bit of an end on this one. Hopefully I can get it to attach to this end. And end off. There we go. That's better. So as I want to take some of that excess off because I don't want it to be bigger than the rest of the bottom. And you may want to blend it in just a little bit to that piece. Straighten that line up so it matches. And then you can just join from that one now to the bottom again. So then we've got it all in place. course, if time is on your side, you can let it sit for a little bit. Unfortunately, time is usually never on my side, so you can barely tell that that's been broken. So you look hard enough, you might, but most people won't. So you can go ahead now and just pipe a little bead border just around the bottom. Just want to hide those seams. It's also an extra little bit of glue to keep the dome from moving. Another thing you can do, you could pipe sort of like a lace point and have them coming out from the bottom. It's almost like creating this little bottom that would stick out. There's a lot of ways you could finish it. You know, if you want to pipe a lot of flowers, you could also put a whole bunch of flowers all around the border of it. And there you have it. There is a royal icing dome that's great for any event.